Picture this. You wake up. Not in a bed. Beds don't exist in your world. You've been sleeping in a nest you built last night from bent branches and leaves, about 4 meters off the ground in a tree or maybe on a slope in the undergrowth where the vegetation is thick enough to cushion the earth. Your body is warm despite the cool mountain air because you are covered in dense black hair that does what body hair is supposed to do when it hasn't been evolutionarily reduced for thermoregulatory sweating efficiency. You sit up. You weigh approximately 180 kilograms if you are an adult male silverback, which means that the process of sitting up requires the casual deployment of more raw muscle mass than most Olympic weightlifters possess. Your arms are longer than your legs. Your chest is enormous, a barrel of muscle and lung capacity that could, if the occasion called for it, produce a sound audible from a kilometer away. Your hands, currently resting on the vegetation around your nest, are larger than a dinner plate and stronger than any human hand that has ever existed. You look at the forest around you. The light is the particular green-filtered quality of early morning in a montane forest, and the air smells of damp vegetation, the previous night's humidity, and the other members of your group who are waking up nearby. You can hear them, soft vocalizations, movement through vegetation, the sounds of large bodies beginning the process of starting another day. And then almost immediately, you are hungry. This is what being a gorilla feels like to start. Not dramatic, not violent, not the chest-beating, territory-defending spectacle that documentaries front-load because it's better television. The overwhelming, moment-to-moment reality of gorilla existence is something considerably more mundane. The persistent, pressing necessity of finding and consuming enormous quantities of vegetation to fuel a body that operates at a metabolic scale that makes ordinary mammalian food requirements look modest. The hunger is the first and most constant thing, so it deserves careful examination before moving into any other dimension of gorilla experience. A large male gorilla requires approximately 18 to 20 kilograms of food per day to maintain his body mass. That's the equivalent of roughly 40 heads of lettuce or approximately 35 pounds of vegetable matter, consumed every single day without exception. Since gorillas eat primarily low-calorie vegetation, leaves, stems, bark, some fruit, occasional insects, achieving this daily caloric requirement means spending the majority of every waking hour eating or moving toward food. Estimates from gorilla field studies suggest that adult gorillas spend approximately 6 to 8 hours per day in active foraging and feeding. This is not leisurely browsing. It is sustained, purposeful, almost industrial consumption, moving systematically through a home range, selecting appropriate vegetation, processing it with hands and teeth, chewing and swallowing continuously. The jaw muscles required for this quantity of daily chewing are enormous. Gorillas have exceptionally developed temporal muscles and a pronounced sagittal crest on the skull that serves as an anchor point for this musculature. And the digestive system is correspondingly large, with a massive colon that ferments and extracts nutrition from plant material over extended processing times. What this means experientially is that hunger is not a crisis state for a gorilla. It is a baseline condition that motivates the day's primary activity. The gorilla is not searching for food because it is in danger of starvation. It is searching for food because eating is what gorilla days are made of, because the body is continuously consuming calories at a rate that requires continuous replenishment, and because the forest is the cafeteria and every day is an 8-hour shift. The sensory experience of eating occupies what would, in a human life, be the time spent working. And like work, it has quality gradations. Some foraging is better than others. Ripe fruit, when available, is the gorilla equivalent of a very good day at the office. Fruit provides more calories per unit of chewing effort than leaves or stems, and gorillas actively prioritize fruit when their home range produces it seasonally. The behavioral evidence for fruit preference includes longer travel distances to reach fruiting trees, competitive behavior at fruit sources, and the social dynamics that form around access to high-quality food. nettles, giant celery, wild ginger, bamboo shoots, various fungi. The dietary inventory of mountain gorillas reads like an unusual upscale restaurant menu, except that the portions are measured in kilograms rather than grams, and the preparation method is universally raw. Western lowland gorillas have broader fruit access and eat more varied diets, but the volume requirements remain constant regardless of what fills them. The physical experience of inhabiting a gorilla body is worth examining carefully because it is the most accessible dimension of the question for human imagination. We have bodies too, and the comparison between the gorilla body and the human body is instructive in both its similarities and its profound differences. Begin with strength. Adult male gorillas are estimated to be approximately 4 to 9 times stronger than a human male of comparable body weight in measures of upper body pulling and pushing force. This estimate comes from studies comparing the grip strength and limb force production of gorillas in captivity with human athletic benchmarks, and it consistently produces numbers that are difficult to contextualize from the inside of a human body. A gorilla can bend iron bars. It can tear apart a wooden structure that would require power tools to dismantle. It can carry loads that no human being can lift. What does this feel like from the inside? Almost certainly it feels like normal physical effort, because all physical capability feels like normal effort to the animal that possesses it. A gorilla using its arms to pull itself up a tree trunk or to reach and break a thick branch is not experiencing superhuman exertion. It is experiencing gorilla normal exertion, calibrated to the body's actual capability the way all effort is calibrated to the body doing it. The knuckle-walking gait that gorillas use for ground-level locomotion is worth examining because it differs so fundamentally from human bipedalism. Gorillas contact the ground with the backs of their curled fingers during quadrupedal walking, bearing weight on the knuckle joints rather than the finger pads or palms. This posture loads the wrists and arms in a way that takes advantage of the gorilla's disproportionate upper body mass and arm length, while keeping the hands partially free for incidental object manipulation during walking. Experienced locomotion always feels natural to the animal doing it. A gorilla moving through forest understands its body's capabilities intuitively. It knows which branches will bear its weight, how to distribute load across multiple contact points when climbing, how to navigate dense vegetation with a large body that has to make its own path. This kinesthetic intelligence is not less sophisticated than the bipedal spatial navigation that humans perform automatically. It is differently sophisticated, calibrated to a different set of physical challenges in a three-dimensional forest environment. Vision in gorillas is closer to human vision than to the visual experience of most other mammals, and this shared visual heritage shapes the experiential comparison between gorilla and human existence in interesting ways. Gorillas, like all great apes, have trichromatic color vision, the same three-receptor color discrimination system that humans use, in contrast to the dichromatic vision of most other mammals. This means that the forest a gorilla sees is a world of color. The reds and oranges of ripe fruit stand out against green foliage in the same way they do for human eyes, because the same evolutionary pressures that drove trichromatic vision in primates, the identification of ripe fruit against foliage, shaped the visual systems of gorillas and humans from the same ancestral stock. Forward-facing eyes with extensive binocular overlap give gorillas excellent depth perception. The same configuration that allows human hands to perform fine manipulation tasks provides gorilla hands with the visual guidance for similarly precise movements. A gorilla selecting and manipulating food items, examining objects of interest, or grooming another group member is using visual manual coordination that is qualitatively similar to the coordination humans use for manual tasks, though applied to different purposes and at a different scale. What gorillas don't have is the extended distance vision that humans in open environments evolved. The forest environment that gorillas inhabit is not one in which scanning far horizons is useful. Visibility is limited to tens of meters in most directions, and the relevant visual information exists at closer ranges. Gorilla visual attention is calibrated to this environment, focused on the immediate surroundings rather than the distant landscape. Oriented toward the detection of other individuals within the social group, the identification of food items in the surrounding vegetation, and the reading of the terrain for navigable paths. By the way, if you want to go even deeper into the secret lives of ancient humans, I just launched a full course called The Secret Lives of Ancient Humans. 10 modules, 3+ hours of content covering everything we never talk about on YouTube. What they feared, how they communicated, what hunted them, and much more. Plus an exclusive PDF guide included. Link in the description. See you inside. The social dimension of gorilla experience is where the account becomes most interesting and most philosophically rich, because gorilla social life is complex, emotionally significant, and in many ways mirrors the social complexity of human existence in ways that both illuminate and complicate the comparison. Gorilla social structure centers on the family group, typically a silverback male, one to several adult females, and their offspring across multiple age classes from infants to juveniles to young adults. The silverback is not simply a dominant male in the competitive hierarchy sense. He is the stable center of the group's social universe, the individual around whom other group members organize their spatial behavior, the primary source of protection for females and offspring, and the arbiter of social conflicts within the group. The relationship between a silverback and the females in his group is not reducible to simple dominance and submission. Long-term field observations of mountain gorilla groups have documented persistent, differentiated relationships between individual silverbacks and individual females. Some females spending more time near the silverback, some silverbacks showing preferential affiliative behavior toward particular females. The history of the relationship influencing how each individual responds to the other in ambiguous social situations. These are not stereotyped dominance interactions. They are individuated relationships with history, with some degree of preference and variation, with behavioral signatures that suggest something more than pure social hierarchy management. The experience of being the silverback, the social center of the group, responsible for group decisions about movement and foraging, the individual who responds to threats and who mediates conflicts, is the gorilla experience most analogous to certain human social roles. And the comparison is illuminating. The silverback's social role requires continuous monitoring of the group's composition, spatial distribution, and social state. It requires reading the behavioral signals of multiple individuals simultaneously and responding appropriately to social situations as they develop. It requires the projection of a specific social presence, calm, stable, decisive, that reassures group members and maintains social cohesion. Gorilla emotional experience is a dimension of the account that requires intellectual honesty about both what the evidence suggests and where the limits of inference lie. The behavioral evidence for emotional states in gorillas is extensive and consistent. Gorillas show behavioral responses to loss, documented cases of extended proximity to deceased group members, altered behavior in the days following the death of familiar individuals, behavioral signatures that field researchers describe in the language of grief while acknowledging the interpretive risks. Gorillas show behavioral signatures of playfulness, distinct play faces, specific vocalizations associated with play contexts, the kind of physical exuberance during social play that in other mammals correlates with positive affective states. Gorillas show fear responses to specific stimuli. The body posture, vocalization, and avoidance behavior associated with fear in mammals generally. They show frustration-like responses when food access is blocked or social goals are thwarted. They show curiosity, approach, and investigation of novel objects and situations, the orientation of attention toward interesting stimuli, the kind of sustained engagement with new things that in other animals correlates with information-seeking motivation. Whether any of these behavioral signatures are accompanied by subjective experience, whether there is something it feels like to be a gorilla who has just lost a group member or a gorilla, discovering a novel food, or a gorilla engaged in play, is the question that behavioral evidence alone cannot answer. The philosophical problem of other minds is not uniquely challenging for gorillas, but it is more challenging than for humans because gorillas cannot report their experience. And because their neural architecture, while similar to human neural architecture in many ways, differs enough that the confident inference of specific emotional experience requires assumptions that are difficult to fully evaluate. What can be said with confidence is that the neural systems most strongly associated with emotional processing in mammals, the amygdala, the limbic system broadly, the neural circuitry that generates affective states and motivates behavior accordingly, are present in gorillas in a form highly similar to the human implementation. The molecular and cellular machinery of mammalian emotion is conserved across gorillas and humans in ways that make the complete absence of emotional experience in gorillas difficult to defend on neuroscientific grounds. Gorilla communication is a dimension of their existence that reveals both the cognitive sophistication of their social intelligence and the ways in which the absence of human-style language shapes the character of that intelligence. Gorillas communicate through a repertoire that includes vocalizations, facial expressions, body postures, and direct physical interaction. The vocalizations include the famous chest beating display, which is more complex in function than its reputation suggests, serving as a distance communication about the silverback's presence, condition, and social status rather than simply as aggression display, as well as a range of contact calls, alarm vocalizations, play sounds, and the deep belch vocalizations that signal contentment during feeding. Facial expressions in gorillas include the play face, an open-mouthed, relaxed expression associated with play contexts, threat faces, appeasement expressions, and various other facial signals that appear to communicate affective state and social intention to other group members. The reading of these facial signals by other gorillas appears to be automatic and rapid, the kind of fast social perception that in humans is described as reading expressions, suggesting a sophisticated social perception system calibrated to the expressive repertoire of the species. What gorillas lack is the syntactic language that allows humans to communicate about events removed from the immediate present, to describe hypotheticals, to transmit accumulated knowledge across generations in explicit verbal form, or to coordinate complex activities through detailed verbal planning. Gorilla communication is powerful within its own parameters. It enables sophisticated social management of a complex group social system, but it is limited to the communicative needs of the present moment and the immediate social environment. The cognitive consequences of this limitation are difficult to specify precisely, but they shape the character of gorilla existence in fundamental ways. A gorilla cannot tell its offspring about a food source discovered 2 valleys over during last year's ranging. It cannot describe a predator it encountered 3 weeks ago. It cannot plan a foraging route for tomorrow through verbal deliberation with other group members. The collective intelligence available to a gorilla group is bounded by the communicative range of its non-linguistic signals in ways that human group intelligence, enabled by language, is not. What does it feel like to be a gorilla? The best honest answer, given everything the behavioral and neuroscientific evidence provides, is something like this. It feels enormously physical. The body is the primary fact of gorilla existence. Its size, its strength, its constant appetite, its capacity for powerful action, and for surprisingly precise manipulation. Gorilla consciousness, whatever its character, is embedded in and oriented around a body that is always present, always demanding attention through hunger or the physical effort of locomotion, always in relationship with the physical environment of the forest. It feels social in a way that is both similar to and different from human social existence. The group is everything, the primary source of safety, of social engagement, of the relationships that appear to constitute something like attachment and affection. The silverback, who is the center of the group, experiences something that functions like responsibility and authority. The females experience something that functions like preference and relationship history. The young experience something that functions like play and learning and attachment to caregiving individuals. None of these functional analogs to human social experience can be confidently mapped onto human emotional experience. But none of them can be confidently dismissed as mere mechanism either. It feels cognitively present and locally engaged. Gorilla attention is oriented toward the immediate, the food available now, the group members nearby, the sounds of the forest in this moment. The extended temporal depth of human consciousness, the planning of distant futures, the narrative construction of personal history, the imagining of other minds and other times, may not characterize gorilla consciousness in the same way. But the engagement with the present moment, with the immediate sensory richness of the forest environment, with the social dynamics of the group right now, appears to be substantial and attentive. It feels safe when it is safe, and alarmed when it is threatened, and satisfied when it is fed, and engaged when the environment is interesting, and at ease when the group is settled and calm. Whether any of those states involve the inner light of subjective experience, whether there is genuinely something it is like to be the gorilla having them, is the question that philosophy and neuroscience have not yet found a method to definitively answer. What seems very difficult to maintain in the face of everything the evidence shows is that being a gorilla feels like nothing at all. The behavioral signatures of experience are too consistent, the neural substrates too similar, the evolutionary history too shared for that conclusion to sit comfortably. Something is happening in there. Something that is neither human nor absent. Something that is, in the most honest framing available, gorilla. And therefore something the human mind can approach but perhaps never fully inhabit, even in imagination. The nest gets rebuilt every night. The forest gets navigated every day. The group gets managed and protected and kept together through the long decades of a silverback's adult life. Whatever it feels like from inside that enormous, extraordinary, irreducibly other kind of body, it is enough to make an entire life. And that, at minimum, is something the rest of us can recognize.